Transformers Devastation turned 10 years old this week. What the heck?
What a game it was, wasn't it? On top of a banger of a soundtrack, iconic voice actors, an incredible cel-shaded art style, and a storyline that feels like a scrap G1 episode turned into a video game, Devastation has to be one of the most highly regarded pieces of Transformers media out there. Like, seriously, this feels like one of the last times Hasbro looked at a project and said, what if we made a love letter to G1? But then added crack into the envelope. Seriously, everything about this game screamed passion, from the smooth combat to the unique visuals we basement dwellers recognized too well. This didn't just feel like another Transformers game. I mean, following War 4 and Fall of Cybertron, it was kinda hard not to have another banger.
You must be misremembering.
Unfortunately, however, it seemed like that streak ended with Devastation, because fast forward to 10 years later, we've somehow downgraded to cheap mobile games and cartoon tie-ins that barely even try to appeal to anyone. I know I'm not alone in wondering if we'll ever get another golden age of gaming for the Transformers brand, since it seems like every cool idea Hasbro comes up with just dies before it can prove itself.
Reactivate!
I was getting there. The next big thing, the game that was supposed to be the triumphant comeback, the one to finally bring us back to glory, and instead Hasbro took it out back and shot it in the head. It's getting harder not to tweak out every single day.
Yeah, because bottling it up and keeping it all in is healthy.
It's just frustrating because Devastation proved that Transformers doesn't need to reinvent itself to work. It just needs to be good. But truthfully, I think the coolest part of Devastation wasn't really in the game itself, but the promotional push it was for the Combiner Wars toy line. You were too blind to notice because you were also a 9-year-old like I was. The connection between Devastation and Combiner Wars is honestly one of the coolest examples of cross-marketing the brand has ever pulled off. When Devastation dropped in 2015, it wasn't just some random nostalgia-driven hack and slash. It was actually tied into the broader Combiner Wars push that Hasbro was rolling out across the toys, comics, and animated media at the time. These projects were part of this short-lived but wildly ambitious attempt to unify Transformers storytelling under one banner, a shared tone, aesthetic, and direction that blended G1 with modern designs and storytelling. Kind of like what the aligned continuity was going for, but mildly successful.
Because having the War for Cybertron game, Transformers Prime, and Rescue Bots in the same universe was gonna work.
But for Devastation, it worked out really well because you had Devastator front and center as both the main character advertised on the cover of the game and the flagship combiner of the toy line. The timing was perfect. People were seeing Devastator everywhere, on the shelves, as a posable toy, in-game as a sick boss, and all the marketing and promo Hasbro could throw at them. This wasn't just a coincidence. This was a fully coordinated push to remind everyone why combiners were still kinda cool.
But as we all know, time is a flat circle.
So jumping to about 10 years later, with Hasbro seemingly reviving the combiner gimmick once again for Studio Series and Age of the Primes with current day engineering, scale, and cost, with Devastator once again at the forefront of it all. But just because it's new, does it make it any better than the ones that came before it? Well, you're still here, so let's find that out for ourselves. Hello everyone, my name is Omega the Real, or make you want to keep it short and simple.
And my name is Anga.
And today, in celebration of 10 years of Transformers Devastation, we're going to be taking a look at the combiner legend himself, the Transformers Studio Series 86 Devastator.
Does this count as a Titan class release? It does in our hearts.
Now, since Devastator is a very different style of figure than what I'm normally used to, this is how we're going to do this. We're going to take a look at every member individually first, in release order, as we build up to the main guy itself. It is kind of a team effort, after all.
Cornball.
So, without any further delay, let's start off with...
No one gets by Rapper, you asshole!
This is probably the best any of these Constructicons are going to get, I'm sorry.
Wow, what a way to ruin it off the bat.
Well, hold on, I didn't say the rest were trash, it's just Scrapper is the gold standard. Guy here is the bar all these Constructicons should have reached for. He's got great paint breakups, solid details, and a design that isn't proportionally wonky. Out of all the different Constructicons from this set, I found myself messing with Scrapper the most, but that's also because it took forever for that second wave, and between this and Bonecrusher, it's obvious who was going to get more love. His design is really solid, definitely the look I think of when it comes to these guys, but I guess that's what being the leader gets you. Also, anybody find it odd that he was the leader despite turning into the Foot? I don't know, always thought that was a weird choice. He also comes packed in with Devastator's gun and for some unknown reason has a loose hold. Great. Articulation is a surprise too, with butterfly joints he really didn't need, but unfortunately a trend that stayed consistent with all these Constructicons was the absence of a waist swivel. Oh, come on!
For a majority of these guys, it kind of makes sense as to why they don't have them for the legs leading the ankle tilt, but the others, it just seems annoying.
Transformation is easily top 5 simplest conversions of all time. The end result gets you a pretty entertaining front loader mode. Thing keeps scalar solidly, and in this mode you can feel the weight of the whole robot crunch itself into as small as it possibly can. Wheels do roll decent, the shovel moves up and down, so it does everything expected of it. Transformation into his limb mode is laughably simple.
Man turns into Foot. That's all he needed to do.
The big beefy bastard returns! Yeah, I've kind of already done shorts on both Scrappy and Boner here, but that doesn't mean I can't talk about him again. Unfortunately for y'all, my opinion still hasn't changed from that short. This thing sucks ass.
Whoa, give us a warning next time?
This is a brick with legs. And that's being nice. This dude just barely even tries to be a decent robot because, oh my god, this thing is so ass. Also doesn't help that this dude has one of the worst color breakups on any of these Constructiconsoles. Staring at this thing for too long can permanently damage eyesight. When people talk about Transformers whose sole purpose in life are supposed to be eyesores, this should be the first example that pops into their minds. And you know what's worse? He doesn't even save himself in posing either because of how little shape for use in designing Bonecrusher. Once again, this is a brick with legs, and poses just as well as you think it could.
You know, I would say something about him beating on Bonecrusher so much, but I think he's right. His entire personality is just being a rectangle through and through.
Luckily for it, the transformation is stupid easy, which is just seeming like a trend with all these guys, and is once again just a rectangle but laying down on the floor. I wish there was something more interesting to say about Bonecrusher than anything I've said so far, but when you're this simple, you kinda don't get to have many unique traits to be complimented. Transformation into limb mode is just continuing the transformation a few steps further, leaving you with a disconnected bicep that feels like it's missing something. Also hurting Bonecrusher's case even further is the fact he doesn't have any wheels to roll around on. Why? I don't care that it doesn't have treads, because how the fuck could you engineer something like that to work, but now we're stuck scratching every surface we roll over like, yeah, we wanted that, thanks Hasbro. I seriously doubt with how basic this bastard is there wasn't any room left for wheels. Cutting corners as usual.
You'll have to go through us first. How strong your steel, Autobots. How quick the conquest.
If you thought Bonecrusher was a big beefy bastard, just wait till you meet this bigger, beefier bastarder.
Nice one.
Now we can finally get into some unknown territory. Long haul is the textbook definition of taking the bulk too seriously. This boy is big. Details and paint on this dude are spot on. Long haul has always been the only Constructicon I could really remember the name of well enough.
Mixmaster is right here, you know.
Sculpt on this dude is spot on with his big ass lower legs and stubby little arms, and somehow this is having the same issues Bonecrusher had, but instead of crashing and burning, is completely embracing them. That black and green color breakup is also helping out this guy a lot, and he's the only one of these guys that come with a blasted molded in 2 different plastics, which I ought to mention now before I forget, but the plastic used on all these Constructicons doesn't feel the same as the plastic they use for most other figures. The best way I could describe it is having a toyetic feel to them. It's not too glossy or fragile feeling. This here is genuine tough, durable material, which ironically fits the characters, Long Haul especially. Getting back on topic though, despite having these wonky proportions, Long Haul poses better than some of his teammates, and that's surprising coming from the walking tank. Also, something to note is how posable these little arms are and his double jointed knees, which are definitely a byproduct of a transformation, and speaking of which, could be done with my eyes closed. And if you couldn't sense that toyetic feeling before, you gotta be sensing it now with how squished this dump truck mode is.
And because of how he's designed, the dump truck cannot dump. Oh well, you win some, you lose some.
And now to get to the part I need to address. They gave the dump truck a trailer. Where do I even begin?
Hey, just be glad they didn't give the jet a trailer. Oh my gosh, they totally did that.
If there was any way they were gonna do this, this probably is the best way they could have done it, I'm gonna be honest with you.
Wait, you're not upset with this?
Nah, not really. Just wait till I get to Superion and then you'll see what upset looks like. Like I was saying, this was probably the best way Hasbro could have tackled this parts for me, because there are just parts on Devastator that absolutely needed this, or else we would have just had Combiner Wars 2.0. Which is kind of what SS86 is secretly attempting to be. Of course, this is mainly just the waist and thighs with the forearms sticked onto the back, but for what it's worth, they tried selling this to us as some sort of artillery pack, to which I say, good try. Not like the green and purples ruined the immersion just a tad. Props to Hasbro for actually basing this on a real life thing and not just having it being unnecessary baggage on the back for no reason at all, like a certain other overpriced Commander.
Huh. That went better than expected.
Let's see how you Autobots look on my hook.
Has Hook ever done anything of note? I really can't seem to think of anything that this dude has done to stand out, other than getting replaced by Prowl for him to turn into the head of Devastator. What the fuck were the comics doing?
And if I remember correctly, the Constructicons like Prowl more, so like, talk about being pointless and a nobody. Okay, I'm sorry, Hook, that was a little mean.
The details and paint on the Hook are probably one of the few noteworthy things about the figure, with the greens and purples popping in hand, now with some gray added in there too. That being said though, this guy still kind of radiates background character energy a lot more so than the others. Like, he looks great, but there's just no personality here at all. Although despite looking boxy, he still does have some decent articulation, with his shoulder pads even be able to move out the way so he gets more reach. Still no wasteful, but having Devastator's head stuck in his ass kind of exempts him from anything harsh. Not a fan of how these arms articulate, however, with the triple segmented articulation, and this won't be the last time we're seeing them either. Transformation, just like all the others, is solid but not complex, with a lot of it being squishing a Hook into place and folding his legs up into his thighs, which is a transformation in Transformers that I never get tired of. Truthfully, my only complaint with the transformation are these fuck-ass tabs that don't go in. Why won't you fit?! The finished product is pretty sweet, with a totally not obvious Devastator head poking through the middle of the alt mode.
I can't see you, you can't see me.
There was one problem with his alt mode, however, and it definitely has to do with his namesake. The Hook barely has any reach. Why? Why does it only go this far? Did Hook have ED in the cartoon, so that's why this is as far as it goes? It's a crane, for fuck's sake. Bro should have that reach. Genuinely, I don't see a reason for it to be like this. For the other Constructicons, they had valid reasons as to why their issues were like that most of the time. But in this case, this is just something Hasbro couldn't give us more of and instead just came up short. Pun absolutely intended. I'm pissed off now.
I'm going to dig your grave, Autobots.
I've seen this before, but from where? No freaking way.
Hey bro, can I copy your homework? Yeah, but make sure to change it so it doesn't look like you copied. Okay, thanks bro.
That's actually hilarious how similar these two look. Hell, if you just squint, you can try to convince yourself they're the same mold, just painted differently. The proportions, the design, hell, even the articulation most of the time feels the same. Like, Hasbro didn't even try to hide it. Yeah, let's just take the SS scrap metal mold, slap some G1 colors on him, square off a few edges, and boom, Scavenger. Despite not actually being an official retool, it's still kind of funny to point out just how similar these two are. But hey, you know, we're allowed to point out these similarities, and I just think it's funny. Regardless of the design similarities, I really enjoy how Scavenger came out. I mean, let's be honest, when the only other deluxe Constructicon is Bonecrusher, there's no real way you're punching down. Scavenger ends up feeling like the more refined of the two anyway, with being the Constructicon with the second most amount of purple on him. Not going to ignore how boxed up this guy is in terms of silhouette, but unlike his deluxe brother, he's fun and not just something you need to finish off the combiner with. Also, funnily enough, he has the exact same points of articulation that Bonecrusher utilizes, but instead of being a brick with legs, the Minecraft's Devastation proportions help this dude steer far away from being a complete mess. Transformation is for sure a distant relative of scrap metal, but with changes done to make it feel not exactly the same as that dude, with the finishing product being this cute little excavator mode. Once again, toyetic as heck here, and I love it so much. And just like Bonecrusher, no wheels. Oh wow.
You'll have to go through us first. How strong your steel, Autobots? How quick the conquest?
And in usual Hasbro fashion, here we are lazily crossing the finish line.
What were you expecting? A waist swivel?
As the final member of Devastator, you'd think with all of Hasbro's mediocre shortcomings, they'd lock in and attempt to make that last member stand out from the sea of green they released previously. But unfortunately, it seems like all their effort was spent on Scavenger instead, because Mixmaster here does absolutely nothing to make himself interesting. While the details and paint are on that average level like with every other Constructicon we've looked at so far, something about it just leaves him with not much personality, and a splat of silver on his right cheek. Be fucking for real. Articulation doesn't fare too much better, because once again, Mixmaster uses his 3-part arm system that makes his whole arm look very wonky, and while his legs are just fine overall, the articulation is just, yeah, that's it. No waist swivel on this dude either, but if you couldn't tell from the other 5, I couldn't care about that at this stage. Truthfully, the only thing saving the robot mode has to be that plastic quality I went on about earlier, and the head sculpt, loving that subtle Decepticon-shaped crown. And once again, transformation is the one saving grace on every single Constructicon we've looked at so far. Cement Mixer mode is a freaking brick, dude. Try throwing this at somebody and you'll end up with an assault charge for sure. As for the actual alt mode itself, the thing's pretty sweet. Rolls clean, the colors work much better here than a robot mode.
You know, at the very least, Hasbro made this one with only one cab this time. Seriously, what the heck was going on with the Combiner Wars version?
And now, without further ado,
Constructicons, merge for the kill!
when I tell you this was the combiner I've been praying for Hasbro to finally get right, my prayers were answered. This is, without a shadow of a doubt, the greatest combiner Hasbro has ever released to date.
That is, until Bruticus, of course.
Those long, grueling months of waiting have finally paid off in the best way possible, because the detail and sculpting on SS86 Devastator are absolutely stunning. Every inch of this figure oozes incredible, from the way each Constructicon component blends seamlessly together into combine mode. It looks awesome! Hasbro really went all out this time. He looks incredible. The proportions are spot on, the head sculpt looks awesome. Glad they went for the visor look and not whatever the hell this is. And the overall presence of Devastator feels like the definitive version people have been waiting for. It's clear that a lot of care went into the combiner itself, even if it meant the core robots kinda sucked, but if you're like me, 99% of this thing's life is gonna be displayed like this on the shelf. So in the end, was all that complaining really worth all that spent breath? Probably not, but you know, they were still valid complaints nonetheless.
Most of them.
Truthfully, I gotta say the biggest problem I've seen from the combine mode is all this junk in the trunk, to which I have to say, is this such a big deal?
Was Hook's hook a big deal?
Shut up, Anga. All this stuff has to go somewhere, right? Yeah, it's a little messy back here, but as long as it holds together, you and I shouldn't have a problem with this, right? And to be honest, with all the 5mm ports back here, I just use to store all his weapons without them appearing on the front, so... unintentional weapon storage, I guess.
Whatever helps you justify it.
Even posing isn't half bad on this guy either, although when compared to the frame combiners, they have just a hair up on Devi here, with being able to pull a 90 at the elbow, while Remake Armor can only pull an 85. If these connections were just pulled out a tiny bit further, maybe this wouldn't be an issue, but as of now, it's an issue regardless. But even with that small gripe, it doesn't do much to take away from just how impressive this thing really is once you have him standing in front of you. The sheer presence of Devastator on a shelf is unreal, unless you got him next to a few Titans, in which case Devi is severely undersized. You know, with Titans being cheaper and shorter now, do you think Hasbro will remake a new Omega Supreme to match with the scale of 86 Devi? I know I'd buy it.
Of course you would.
Honestly, if this is the new bar for combiners moving forward, then those after Devastator here have some serious work to do if they want to even attempt to come close to the excellence on your screen now. Because if Hasbro manages to capture that same level of polish and engineering magic we see here again, we might actually be witnessing the dawn of a new golden age for combiners. For the longest time, the combiner concept has always been hit or miss. Either they looked great but felt fragile, or they were solid but sacrificed too much in terms of articulation and design. SS86 Devastator finally bridges that gap, however. It feels like Hasbro truly sat down, looked at everything fans have been asking for the past decade, and actually listened.
But only for Devastator. We really gotta work on those combiner frames, man.
The end result is something that doesn't just check boxes, it raises expectations. The engineering here shows what's possible when a combiner actually combines, instead of just being stuck on a frame.
Jeez, we get it. You hate frame combiners. What else is new?
If this philosophy does in fact carry over into future releases, imagine what it can mean for Bruticus or whoever else they attempt. We're talking about combiners that can actually pose and look good while doing it, giving fans definitive versions of these giants once and for all. Although, you know, once and for all isn't really a thing for Transformers, is it? So yeah, if Devastator is the benchmark, then the message is loud and clear. The days of flimsy, hollow, or awkward combiners are pretty much over, and from here on out, it's all about precision, presence, and pride of design. And honestly, I can't wait to see what Hasbro cooks up next, given they don't drop the ball on whoever's up.
Yeah, let's just hope Bruticus doesn't come out looking like a Creo set after being thrown into a bin. Hasbro, we're watching you. Don't fumble the bag after setting the bar this high, or else, I don't know. I have better things to do tonight than threaten a mega corporation who only sees us as numbers in a book.